Slow your breath now and let the great scale of space connect with the simple rhythm of your chest. The universe doesn't just whisper its secrets, it broadcasts them on a frequency we are simply not attuned to, until one morning, the signal is so strong, it reframes the sky. Imagine the air feeling sharp and dry, and the gentle, slow drift of the Milky Way, our magnificent home, being suddenly interrupted by something that fundamentally does not belong, an intruder from beyond the neat, established boundaries of the solar system. The sheer, silent arrogance of it, to cut across the orbits of planets that have danced around the sun for 4.5 billion years. What we see is merely light. What we feel is the cold, clean touch of an impossibility. Quietly, we establish the facts, and this is where the calm begins to fray. The object designated 3I Atlas, a comet of uncertain provenance, was not following the comfortable, parabolic curve of a visitor merely swinging by our solar system for a brief, elliptical photograph. Its velocity, measured in kilometers per second, suggested an escape trajectory, meaning it was traveling too fast to be gravitationally bound to the sun, like a ship already beyond the harbor's pull. Its speed was a quiet declaration of foreignness, a velocity that suggested an origin in the deep, cold emptiness between the stars. The first calculations were confirmed by observatories across the planet, from the high, dry air of the Atacama Desert to the frozen outposts near the South Pole. This was not one of ours. The sheer impossibility of its orbit stacks up like ancient stones. The first interstellar object we ever detected, named 1I Oumuamua, was strange enough, but this comet, 3I Atlas, possessed an additional, confounding layer, an enormous, unexpected eruption of material, a surge of gas and dust far exceeding what the most volatile comets of our own solar system ever manage. It was the equivalent of a small moon's worth of water ice and rock suddenly venting into space, a cosmic geyser witnessed across 40 million miles. It was behaving with an unnatural, almost purposeful aggression, like a fire being stoked with deliberate intent. But what if that eruption, that sudden, massive outgassing, was not merely an accident of physics, not just a frozen kernel of debris reaching its thermal limit, but a deliberate course correction? What if it wasn't supposed to happen that way? This central question, the pivot point of our quiet journey tonight, leads us into speculation that is both terrifying and gently liberating. If an object from interstellar space can perform an action that seems to defy all known cometary mechanics, what does that imply about the architecture of our own reality? This echoes through the deepest chambers of human history, a mythic link to the ancient belief that the sky is not merely scenery, but a canvas upon which the gods or the great ancestors draw their warnings. The Mesopotamians saw omens in the drift of 7 stars. The ancient Maya measured epochs by the appearance of a great fire snake in the heavens. We are merely the latest generation to watch a light in the dark and ask, what does it mean for us? This moment, as you listen to the facts unfold, is a profound and beautiful existential reflection, a moment of profound cosmic wonder. We are on a pale blue dot, observing a visitor whose velocity suggests it has spent 400 million years traversing the gulf between spiral arms of the galaxy, and now it is here. You are the temporary witness to a timeless event. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment telling me what time it is and where you are, so we can feel this quiet connection across the sleeping globe. The comet races toward us, its tail a bright, defiant flag of dust and gas. But is it heading for us or merely past us? The answer may be the same, or it may diverge in a way that rewrites the physics textbooks forever, beginning with this strange, beautiful burst of light. The narrative begins with a number that should have been impossible, a measurement taken in a quiet laboratory at a great university on the East Coast, where the air hums with the low thrum of supercomputers and the hushed conversation of minds that traffic in infinities. The object, 3I Atlas, had an observed velocity of 45 kilometers per second. This speed, this quiet declaration of independence from our sun's gravity, is the opening chord in a symphony of the impossible. We are taught that things which belong to our solar system, the comets, the asteroids, the planets themselves, all follow the rigid, comforting rules of the Newtonian clockwork. A dance choreographed by gravity. They are gravitationally bound, meaning if you were to wait long enough, they would eventually return to the vicinity of the Sunday. But this object, 3I Atlas, had what the astrophysicists term a hyperbolic trajectory, a path that arcs away from the center of mass, never to return. It is passing through, a traveler on a journey that is measured not in years, but in hundreds of thousands of years between its encounters with star systems. Imagine standing on a cold, basalt plain in Iceland, the air smelling of sulfur and the sea, and watching a ship crest a wave far out on the horizon, heading in a straight line, completely ignoring the existence of the coastline you are standing on. That ship is 3I Atlas. It is a vessel of rock and ice and unknown molecules that has no interest in docking. Its speed is its passport to the interstellar void. 45 kilometers every single second is a speed that simply does not allow for a polite conversation with the sun's gravitational pull. It is moving approximately 100,000 miles per hour relative to the center of our solar system. The Harvard team, led by a scientist whose gentle, precise voice became the quiet storm center of this event, named Dr. Avi Loeb, were the first to look at the data, confirm the numbers, and then lean back in their expensive, ergonomic chairs and allow a slow, sinking wonder to settle in their stomachs. For the evidence had deepened immediately. The initial observational data, the pristine pixels captured by the Pan-STARRS telescope on Maui, spoke to a common cometary origin. It looked like a comet. It smelled, spectroscopically speaking, like a comet. But it moved like a bullet fired from another galaxy, or at least from a point of origin that was truly foreign to our galactic neighborhood. This is the point where the mind, conditioned by the small, predictable rhythms of Earth, begins to stretch and seek refuge in metaphor. The velocity of 3I Atlas means that it has traversed the dark, lightless gulf between stars, a journey that might have taken 20 million years, perhaps even longer. It has witnessed the birth and death of other, smaller stars. It has floated through nebulae, where the light itself is ancient and stretched thin. When it entered the sun's sphere of influence, known as the Oort cloud, a giant, icy shell, 1 light year in diameter, it was a ghost of ice, merely passing through its own version of a sleepy, galactic suburb. Our solar system is not a permanent residence for 3I Atlas. It is merely a landmark on a vast, cosmic road trip. And yet, this is where the impossibility stack began to climb higher. Because an object traveling at such speeds through a region of space where the temperature is barely 4 degrees above absolute zero should be chemically inert. It should be a chunk of dead, silent rock, cold as the void itself. It should not be erupting, but erupt it did. On the morning of October 29th, 2025, amateur astronomers across the planet, from the high, dark skies of rural Australia to the remote, automated telescopes in the deserts of Arizona, noticed a profound, sudden brightening of the comet. It was not a slow, gentle increase in luminosity, which is common for comets as they approach the thermal warmth of the Sunday. It was a rapid, dramatic spike in brightness, as if someone had flicked a switch. The size of the cloud of material expelled from the comet, its coma, was measured to be larger than the size of the planet Jupiter, a truly staggering volume of gas and dust. This material, mostly water ice and simple carbon molecules, was being ejected with force, contributing to an acceleration that could not be explained by the simple, uniform sublimation of ice. It was like watching a small pebble suddenly develop the thrust of a rocket engine, an act of almost deliberate, non-Newtonian mechanics. The planet doesn't keep a diary, but if it did, this day would be noted with a question mark. The scientific community offered 3 plausible anomalies and 1 mythic link. The first anomaly suggested a pocket of highly volatile super ice, a form of frozen compound that had never before been observed, deep within the comet's nucleus, triggered by the sun's warmth like a cosmic landmine. This is mathematically possible, but statistically improbable. The second anomaly suggested a gentle, almost undetectable, rotational instability, where the heating caused a slight wobble, cracking the core and exposing fresh, pristine layers of ice to the solar radiation all at once. This is the common, safe explanation. The third anomaly, which began to take hold in the quiet corners of the physics departments, was that the comet was not uniform, but rather possessed an unusual, low-density structure, perhaps hollowed out by ancient internal processes, allowing the pressure to build up to a critical point before the massive explosion. This led to the gentle, almost shy admission that we simply did not understand the material properties of objects that originated outside our own solar system. And this lack of understanding is the mythic link. For every time a comet or a meteor has deviated from the expected path, from the Great Comet of 1680, which shook the understanding of all European astronomers, to the Tunguska event of 1908, humanity has immediately reached back to an ancient psychological truth. The unusual in the heavens is a harbinger of change on Earth. The mythic connection is the deep, quiet fear that the universe is not random, but purposeful. The Harvard scientist, Dr. Loeb, offered a more provocative, yet calmly reasoned alternative to the 3 anomalies. He suggested, with a dry, academic humor that hid the true scale of the idea, that the most rational explanation for a non-gravitational acceleration and an unprecedented explosion of material might be something less geological and more, shall we say, technological, not in the sense of a grand Hollywood spacecraft, but in the subtle engineering of a slow-burn propulsion system, a low-thrust engine designed to slightly nudge the trajectory of a derelict piece of equipment. The comet, in his hypothesis, was not a natural object, but a piece of interstellar debris, a piece of detritus from a civilization in a far-off star system, a cosmic message in a bottle disguised as a dirty snowball. The sudden, massive outgassing, the eruption that created the massive coma, was merely the failure of a very old piece of shielding, exposing a reaction mass to the heat of our sun and causing a brief, fiery, unintentional firing of a very, very old engine. Where are you listening from tonight? The question is a quiet mirror to the great cosmic question. Where did it come from? The notion of a deliberate, or even accidental, course correction is tied directly to the supposed deadline, 17 days. This was not a prediction of doom, but a scientific time marker, 17 days was the window during which the comet would be closest to the Sun, its perihelion, and therefore the maximum amount of energy and material would be released. It was the scientific time frame for the maximum amount of information to be gathered before the comet, using its incredible velocity, would depart our inner solar system forever, heading back into the cold, deep emptiness of the interstellar medium. 17 days to observe, 17 days to gather light and spectra, 17 days to perhaps catch the elusive sign of something artificial. But this was only the beginning of our strange journey, the first step into the deep, echoing evidence. And yet, even then, we knew this was not merely a comet. This was a riddle whispered from the dark. To understand this world, we must go further back, to the echoes from the past, to the first time humanity looked up and realized the sky was not just a ceiling, but a limitless well of possibility, a well from which strange objects occasionally swim. The evidence deepens with every kilometer the comet travels, and its incredible, impossible velocity brings us closer to a truth that may be far stranger than we are currently comfortable accepting. The light of 3I Atlas, that sudden, defiant flare witnessed across the globe, was not merely a bright splash on the cold, dark canvas of the night sky. It was a cosmic message, written in the language of atoms. This is where the evidence deepens, moving from the realm of orbital mechanics to the quiet precision of spectroscopy. Imagine holding a single drop of morning dew, letting the sun shine through it, and seeing the light break into the colors of a rainbow. Spectroscopy is the exact, scientific, and profoundly beautiful act of separating the light from a distant object into its component wavelengths. Each wavelength, each individual band of color, is a unique fingerprint that tells the scientist exactly which elements and molecules are present in the light source. It can tell us if a star is composed of hydrogen and helium, and it can tell us the chemical composition of the gases and dust erupting from the nucleus of an interstellar comet. The initial spectra gathered by the powerful Hale telescope on Mount Palomar were immediately confounding. A typical solar system comet, that familiar, dirty snowball, usually exhibits strong signatures of water ice, a distinct, bright line for what we call the hydroxyl radical, which is one hydrogen atom and one oxygen atom. It also shows evidence of simple carbon compounds, the carbon and nitrogen bonds that form the basic building blocks of organic chemistry. The spectrum of 3I Atlas certainly showed these, but it also contained a peculiar absence, a quiet vacuum in the data that spoke volumes. The signature of cyanide, a simple but common molecule in almost all of our solar system comets, was dramatically, bafflingly low. Cyanide is one carbon atom and one nitrogen atom, and it is a ubiquitous component of cometary ice, the quiet signature of the primeval soup from which our solar system congealed. Its absence, or near absence, in 3I Atlas suggested a comet that was fundamentally different from anything we had catalogued in our galactic neighborhood, a comet that had condensed from a gas cloud with a radically different chemical composition, a true outlier. This unexpected chemical profile provided the second pillar of evidence. Not only was the object moving differently, its very material was foreign. The evidence deepened to suggest that the 3I Atlas comet did not form in the same ancient, swirling nebula of gas and dust that created our Sun, our Earth, and our familiar planetary neighbors. It was born in the gas cloud surrounding another star, perhaps a star that was far less metallic than our Sun, or perhaps a star that was so old that the chemical abundance of its natal nebula was profoundly different from our own. Imagine trying to bake a cake using a recipe written in an unknown language and discovering that a core ingredient, salt, is missing. The resulting structure, the resulting flavor, is still recognizably cake, but its fundamental character is altered. The comet was a cosmic cake, baked with a different flour. This difference in composition immediately strengthened the argument of the Harvard scientist, Dr. Loeb. If the object is naturally occurring, it is profoundly unusual. If it is technological, this unusual composition is a natural, almost expected consequence of having been engineered in an environment unlike our own. We are all, you and I, intimately familiar with the gentle, rhythmic cadence of life on Earth. But the life we know, the life that breathes and thinks and dreams, is based on the abundance of water and carbon. If a comet, an object meant to be a fossil of its star system, has a significantly different chemical makeup, it implies that the star system from which it came might also host planets and perhaps life that are chemically distinct from our own terrestrial norms. We are talking about the subtle shift from the expected to the profound. Think of the universe as a vast library, and our solar system is one aisle of books written in the same language. 3i Atlas is a book from an entirely different wing, written in a different alphabet, dealing with a cosmology we do not yet understand. The scientists began to turn their focus away from the missing synonide and toward the peculiar strength of the other signals, particularly the presence of complex hydrocarbons, molecules far more complicated than mere water ice, molecules that suggest a history of processing, of being repeatedly warmed and cooled, perhaps even of being chemically altered by intense radiation. The evidence was suggesting a complex object, an object with a history. This deepens the emotional rhythm of the story, allowing the awe to quietly settle back in. We are not just looking at a rock, we are examining a message in a bottle that traveled for 100,000 centuries. Consider the sheer endurance of that rock, that ancient fragment of a cold, forgotten solar system. It has been bombarded by cosmic rays, subjected to the gentle but pervasive influence of dark matter, and it has sailed through the dark matter halo of our galaxy, patiently waiting for a star to cross its path. Its eruption, that sudden, brilliant outburst, was the sound of its journey reaching a temporary, thermal climax. And this is where the dry humor of the astronomer returns. For the question is asked, did the comet know it was being observed? Of course not. The universe does not keep track of our instruments. But the coincidence of a truly interstellar object, the second one ever found, exhibiting non-gravitational acceleration and an entirely anomalous chemical composition, stretches the boundaries of statistical improbability. This is not just a strange coin flip. This is 1,000 coins all landing on their edge at the exact same moment. The third pillar of evidence came from the slight but perceptible changes in the object's rotation, observed through the subtle flickering of the light curve. Imagine a perfectly smooth, white stone spinning in the air. The light reflecting off it would be uniform. Now imagine a stone with an unusual shape, perhaps elongated or irregular, spinning in the air. The light would flicker, brightening and dimming as the different faces presented themselves to the sunday. The Harvard team and their international collaborators carefully analyzed this flicker, and the data was ambiguous, but suggestive. It hinted at a shape that was far from spherical, perhaps elongated like a cigar, or flat like a pancake. This is the third anomaly, and it connects directly back to the very first interstellar object, 1I Oumuamua, which was also observed to be highly elongated, and which also exhibited a non-gravitational acceleration. The universe, it seems, sends its exotic visitors in peculiar, non-spherical shapes, a gentle challenge to the accepted wisdom that objects in space, given enough time, tend toward the most energy-efficient shape, the sphere. The coincidence of two interstellar objects, one a comet and one an asteroid, both possessing non-gravitational acceleration and a highly irregular, hard-to-explain shape, pushed the envelope of scientific credulity. We began to look at the sky not as a purely natural phenomenon, but as a vast, celestial junkyard filled with the debris of civilizations that have long since vanished or simply moved on. The scientist's challenge is to find the most natural explanation first, and the most conservative explanation is always the one that suggests the universe is merely a collection of random, inert, physical processes. But when the data repeatedly points toward the unusual, the conservative explanation begins to feel less like science and more like a form of comfortable denial. The mythic link here is the concept of the great silence, the profound, deafening quiet in the universe, where we expected to hear the chatter of 1,000 alien civilizations. What if the universe is not silent, but merely filled with the trash of others, the derelict buoys and broken signposts of star-faring species, whose empires have crumbled into dust, or who simply decided to pack up and leave their cosmic homes? The evidence deepens the more we look, and the more we question the original assumption. We are now talking about the subtle difference between a rock and a carefully engineered shell, between an iceberg and a very old, very cold canister. And yet, this calm tension is what makes the moment beautiful. We are not in a panic. We are simply watching the greatest scientific riddle of our time unfold, with a quiet, hypnotic cadence. The comet is moving too fast. Its chemistry is too strange. Its rotational flicker is too unusual. 3 anomalies, all pointing to a single, unsettling conclusion. 3. Atlas is not one of ours. And this is the gentle transition to the deep past, the echoes from history, where the human mind has always wrestled with the profound meaning of a light in the darkness that does not follow the comfortable, known path. We are about to zoom out from the spectroscopy lab and into the quiet, echoing chambers of our shared human history. The universe is about to show us its age, and its indifference, and its deep, quiet ability to surprise us. The 17 days are ticking down, not to an end, but to a moment of maximum illumination, maximum information. The light stretches like silk across the great, dark gulf, and we must now go further back into the shadows of our past to understand how humanity has always responded to the profound intrusion of the unexpected. The evidence has done its work. Now the philosophy must begin. To truly grasp the significance of 3i Atlas, we must zoom out, far beyond the emotional drama of Earth, and adopt the cosmic perspective, a view so vast that our planet shrinks to a single, pale blue mote of dust. This is the scale where the comet's journey becomes a meditation on the sheer size and age of the Milky Way galaxy, a collection of 400 billion stars, spanning 100,000 light-years from spiral arm to spiral arm. The comet, traveling at 45 kilometers per second, is sailing the galactic gulf, a vast, cold expanse of interstellar space that is almost entirely empty. Imagine yourself drifting in the dark, lightless void between stars, a place where the nearest sun is 4 light-years away, a distance that would take 100,000 years to traverse, even at the immense speed of the Apollo 11 mission. In this space, the temperature is barely 4 degrees above absolute zero, just slightly warmer than the coldest possible temperature in the universe. This is the environment of the interstellar medium, a sparse mist of hydrogen and helium atoms, punctuated by occasional, massive clouds of molecular gas and dust. The comet, 3I Atlas, has spent tens of millions of years in this environment, preserving its original chemical composition in the deep freeze of the vacuum. It is a time capsule, a piece of frozen history from a star system that is now long gone or dramatically altered. The question of its origin is tied to the concept of stellar nurseries, the massive clouds of gas and dust where new stars are born. When a star system forms, only a small fraction of the material coalesces into planets, moons, and the star itself. The rest is gravitationally ejected, flung out into the galactic gulf like discarded debris. Our own sun, in its early, energetic youth, must have ejected billions of comets into the interstellar medium, icy fragments that now travel forever, sailing silently between star systems. 3I Atlas is one such fragment, born in the violent, chaotic environment of a star-forming region, somewhere in the spiral arms of the Milky Way, perhaps near the constellation of Lyra or Cygnus. Its journey has been a slow, quiet drift, governed by the subtle tug of passing stars and the gentle, pervasive influence of the entire galaxy's gravitational field. This journey highlights the third anomaly, the amount of time required for the comet to reach us. At its current velocity, even traversing the great distance between star systems, the journey of 3I Atlas must have taken between 5 million and 50 million years. We are talking about timescales that predate the evolution of Homo sapiens by a factor of 20, when this comet was a young, fresh piece of ice. Sailing away from its parent star, our Earth was already hosting the earliest hominids, creatures that would one day look up at the sky and invent the concept of time itself. The sheer, silent patience of the universe is beautiful and terrifying. The comet does not know it is old. It merely continues its trajectory, oblivious to the fact that it is a profound historical artifact. The Harvard scientists' hypothesis, the gentle suggestion of alien technology, begins to gain a quiet, sober dignity when we consider the sheer scale of the galactic population. If there are 400 billion stars in the Milky Way, and if even a tiny fraction of those stars host civilizations that reach a technological level similar to, or far exceeding, our own, the interstellar medium should be peppered with their detritus. Every star system, every civilization, will eventually create its own cosmic garbage, the equivalent of our discarded space shuttles and defunct satellites, but on a scale appropriate for a star-faring species. These fragments, these silent pieces of technological archaeology, would be ejected into the galactic gulf, where they would sail for millions of years, indistinguishable from the natural comets and asteroids, unless they possess some peculiar signature. 3I Atlas, with its anomalous velocity, its strange chemistry, and its massive, unexplained eruption, presents the strongest set of peculiar signatures we have yet observed. Imagine the universe not as a silent, empty space, but as a vast ocean, and the star systems are islands. The space between is filled with the wreckage of 1,000 ships that have sailed, fought, and sunk over the eons. We, on Earth, are merely one island in that immense ocean, and 3I Atlas is a piece of flotsam that has washed up on our shore. This is the mythic link, the idea of the abandoned artifact, the treasure or the trash of a civilization that is beyond our reach. The comet becomes the quiet embodiment of the Fermi paradox, the scientific question of why the galaxy seems so silent. Perhaps the galaxy is not silent at all. Perhaps we are simply not listening to the right kind of signal, mistaking the wreckage for the natural environment. We are looking for grand radio broadcasts, when the true evidence is quietly drifting past us at 45 kilometers per second. The transition from the cosmic perspective to the human reflection is the most important step in our quiet, hypnotic journey. For all the immense scale of the galaxy, for all the millions of years the comet has traveled, it is only in the last few weeks of its journey, when it is closest to Earth and the Sun, that its silent history has been illuminated. The urgency of the 17 days is not about the comet's destruction, but about our own brief, precious window of observation. In 17 days, the comet will be moving so fast and so far away that its light will become too faint to analyze with any meaningful precision. 17 days to gather the full spectrum, to measure the subtle forces of its acceleration, to gather the final, critical data points that might distinguish between a naturally occurring, statistically improbable rock and a truly ancient, technological artifact. The quiet, dry humor of the scientist is evident in the fact that the two most important objects discovered from interstellar space, 1I Oumuamua and 3I Atlas, have both behaved in ways that defy the most conservative, natural explanations. The universe is not playing by our scientific rulebook. It is a profound, subtle challenge, a silent joke played by the cosmos on the ambitious, meticulous minds of earth-bound scientists. We are forced to confront the humbling truth. Our current understanding of physics and chemistry is incomplete, or the universe is a far more complex and active place than we previously assumed. The comet is not merely a piece of ice. It is a catalyst for a philosophical shift, a sudden, sharp intake of breath that reminds us of our true scale in the vastness of the cosmos. The human reflection must now begin, as we move from the cold, indifferent physics of the interstellar medium to the warm, fragile interior life of humanity. Having sailed the galactic gulf and absorbed the vast, incomprehensible scale of the cosmos, we now turn inward towards the human reflection, the quiet, profound awareness of our own solitude in the face of such immense indifference. This is the moment where the science fades into the deep, hypnotic cadence of philosophical wonder, where the speed of 3I Atlas is measured not in kilometers per second, but in the sudden, sharp acceleration of our own self-awareness. Imagine standing alone on a silent beach, on a night of no moon. The only sound, the slow, rhythmic exhalation of the ocean. In the sky above you, the 400 billion stars of the Milky Way are visible, a pale, overwhelming ribbon of light. It is in this environment of profound solitude that the arrival of an interstellar object, a quiet traveler from another star, becomes a deeply personal event. It is a moment where the vastness of the universe is suddenly given a name and a velocity. 3I Atlas. The comet's trajectory, its refusal to be gravitationally bound to our sun, becomes a metaphor for our own fragile independence, a reminder that we are merely guests in this small, warm corner of the galaxy. The human mind is a subtle, complex mechanism designed to create meaning out of chaos. When confronted with the three anomalies, the impossible velocity, the strange chemistry, and the massive, unexplained eruption, the mind does not merely process data, it seeks narrative. We ask not only what it is, but why it is here, and what it means for us. This psychological pattern, the need to anthropomorphize the cosmos, is the essence of the human reflection. The comet, in its sheer foreignness, forces us to re-examine our own place in the hierarchy of the universe. Are we the only conscious actors on this vast stage, or are we merely one of many, quietly observing the technological detritus of our predecessors? This is where the idea of the Great Silence returns, not as a scientific puzzle, but as an existential condition. The fact that we have not detected any grand, overwhelming signal from a vast galactic civilization forces us to live in a state of profound, beautiful solitude. The arrival of 3I Atlas, whether it is an alien artifact or a statistically improbable rock, is a gentle, almost shy challenge to that solitude. It suggests that the galaxy is not empty, but merely full of things we do not yet recognize, subtle signs that are easily mistaken for the natural environment. We are like archaeologists who have been looking for an inscription in gold and have instead tripped over a simple, grey tool made of stone. The tool is no less valuable for being common. The quiet humor in this segment is the recognition that our deepest anxieties are often the most mundane. We are worried about a natural disaster, a collision with an asteroid, the possibility of an immediate, cataclysmic event. 3I Atlas is a problem of a far more subtle, philosophical nature. It is not threatening to destroy us. It is threatening to redefine us. The possibility of life elsewhere, the possibility of other technologies, means that our unique status, our proud isolation, is merely a temporary condition, a phase in our intellectual growth. The comet is a cosmic mirror, reflecting back to us the truth that we are not the center of the universe, and that our small, local concerns are dwarfed by the immense, quiet traffic of the stars. The 17 days is the ultimate expression of this human reflection. It is not a countdown to doom, but a quiet, powerful time marker that focuses our intellectual energy. 17 days to fully appreciate the scale of the object's journey. 17 days to gather the final pieces of its spectral signature. 17 days to confront the humbling truth of our ignorance. This sense of urgency, of a brief window of maximum information, is what drives the scientific curiosity that separates us from the ancient people who saw only omens. We do not fear the comet. We yearn to understand it. The awe we feel is balanced by the rigor of our scientific method. The mythic link here is the archetypal figure of the voyager, the wanderer from the outer lands. From the Epic of Gilgamesh, searching for the meaning of death, to the quiet, lone traveler in the great American landscape, the voyager is the one who brings the truth from the outside. 3I Atlas is the ultimate voyager, bringing a truth that is both scientific and profoundly poetic, that the universe is far larger, far older, and far stranger than we have ever dared to imagine. Its velocity of 45 kilometers per second is the speed of revelation. Slow your breath again and connect the quiet rhythm of your heart to the enormous, silent motion of the galaxy. The human reflection is the ultimate act of humility. We are forced to admit that our textbooks are incomplete, our maps are inaccurate, and our understanding of the universe is merely a beautiful, fragile sketch. But this admission is not a failure. It is the beginning of a new awakening, a new curiosity. The comet, in its silent, swift passage, has opened a door to a vaster, more complex reality. And this is the gentle transition to the great silence, the profound, deep emptiness between the stars that has been the theater of the comet's immense journey. We will now consider the meaning of that silence and the possibility that the universe is not waiting to be found, but is merely drifting past us, a majestic, quiet river of cosmic time. The 3I Atlas comet is an echo in the great hall of our solitude. We now drift into the deepest chamber of our cosmic exploration, a place where the evidence, the history, and the reflection converge into a profound question: the meaning of the great silence. This is the segment where we consider the deep, immense quiet between the stars, an ocean of unheard frequencies that has been the silent theatre of the three Atlas comets' multi-million-year journey. The great silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the absence of a technological signal, a vast, deafening quiet in a galaxy that should be teeming with the chatter of 1,000 civilizations. Imagine the universe as a vast, ancient radio spanning 100,000 light years, and we have been diligently tuning in for over 60 years, listening on various frequencies, searching for the familiar static that would signal an intelligent transmission. And yet, the only signal we have received is the gentle, cosmic hum of the Big Bang, the hiss of primordial radiation that tells the story of the universe's birth. The rest is silence. The only physical objects that arrive are the natural, silent rocks of the asteroids, the icy fragments of comets, and the mysterious, silent travelers like 3I Atlas. The silence deepens the mystery of the comet's anomalous behavior. If the galaxy is so vast, and life is common, why does the most unusual object we have detected arrive not with a grand announcement of a technological civilization, but as a silent, sputtering, non-gravitationally accelerating piece of detritus? The great silence offers two profound possibilities, both of which are equally humbling. The first possibility, the one that makes us feel profoundly alone, is that life is truly rare, and that the long, improbable chain of biological and technological evolution that occurred on Earth is a cosmic fluke, a one-in-a-billion event that has not been replicated in our galactic neighborhood. The great silence, in this context, is the sound of our own solitude, the echo of a universe that is vast, beautiful, but fundamentally indifferent to the creation of consciousness. The second possibility, the one that quietly humbles our sense of technological superiority, is that we are simply not listening to the right frequencies. The radio wave band, the frequency of our own technological adolescence, is a narrow slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. A truly advanced civilization, one that is millions of years ahead of us, might communicate or travel using principles of physics we have not yet discovered. They might communicate with neutrinos, or through the subtle manipulation of space-time itself, or through forms of energy that our current instruments are simply incapable of detecting. The great silence, in this context, is not a statement about the absence of life, but a statement about the limits of our own perception. We are listening to a static-filled frequency, while the real conversations are taking place in an entirely different bandwidth. This is the gentle transition where the 3I Atlas comet becomes a quiet, physical challenge to the great silence. If the object is technological, even if it is a derelict piece of equipment, it is a physical proof that something was here, something that sailed the galactic gulf and then simply shut down. The object's anomalous eruption, the massive, unexplained outgassing, could be interpreted as a silent signal, a final, unintentional flicker of a long-dead engine. It is a sign that the silence is merely a temporary condition, a veil that can be lifted by the physical, undeniable presence of an artifact. We are looking for a phone call, and we have found a broken piece of a vast, silent machine. The dry, understated humor here is the idea that the greatest piece of evidence for alien technology is not a grand, magnificent vessel, but a broken, sputtering piece of cosmic junk. It is the universe's way of saying, we are here, but we are too busy, or too old, or too indifferent to announce ourselves with a grand flourish. We simply leave our trash behind. The mythic link is the archetypal idea of the ruin, the crumbling architecture of a lost civilization. The comets and asteroids of the interstellar medium become the quiet, silent ruins of 1,000 forgotten galactic empires. The urgency of the 17 days is amplified by the knowledge that the object is leaving the area of maximum illumination and entering the deep silence of the outer solar system. We have a brief window to gather the final data points, the last possible observations that might distinguish between a naturally occurring, statistically improbable rock and a truly ancient, technological artifact. The scientists are not looking for a message, they are looking for a signature, a slight deviation in the rotation, a unique spectral line that is not a compound, but an engineered material, a final, quiet piece of evidence that the great silence is merely a temporary auditory illusion. The human reflection on the great silence is the acknowledgement of our own technological trajectory. We are a young civilization, already polluting our own orbital space with thousands of pieces of space debris. In 1,000 years, if we survive and expand into the solar system, we will have created our own sphere of technological detritus, a swarm of abandoned satellites and defunct probes that will sail silently into the interstellar medium to be discovered by a civilization on another star system millions of years in the future. 3i Atlas is a mirror to our own future, a quiet reminder that the end product of technological civilization is often not a grand, unified empire, but a massive collection of silent, discarded junk. The segment ends on the quiet, unresolved thought that the great silence is merely a matter of perspective. It is silent to our ears, but it is a busy, dynamic, violent place, filled with the constant churn of stellar creation and destruction, the slow, silent drift of billions of icy comets, and perhaps the wreckage of civilizations that have long since moved on, or simply evolved beyond the need for grand, noisy pronouncements. We may already be part of the experiment, part of the process of being observed by forces and entities that are entirely outside our current, limited scope. The 3i Atlas comet continues its hyperbolic trajectory, its velocity of 45 kilometers per second, a constant, quiet challenge to the great silence. And this is the gentle transition to the next segment, where the quiet wonder returns and the scientific details of the comet's strange, inexplicable eruption are re-examined, looking for one final, unambiguous piece of evidence. The search for the truth is merely the quiet, hypnotic cadence of listening to the silence. We arrive now at the quiet closure, the final, deep segment of our hypnotic journey, where the immense scale of the cosmos is gently handed off to the simplicity and peace of the dark. The transit of the 3i Atlas comet, the 17 days of intense observation, the quiet debate between the artifact and the rock, is now a profound, lingering memory, a final, unresolved thought that dissolves into the peaceful rhythm of the night. Imagine the universe as a vast, ancient library, and the 3i Atlas comet was merely a single, ancient scroll, briefly taken from the shelf, examined for a few precious moments, and then returned to the immense, dark stacks. The scroll is now moving away, its light fading into the darkness of the outer solar system, its velocity of 45 kilometers per second, a constant, quiet reminder that it is simply passing through. The quiet closure is the acknowledgement that the great experiment is over, but the quiet wonder remains. The lingering question, the profound uncertainty about the comet's true nature, is the ultimate, gentle handoff to the dark. The universe does not provide easy answers. It provides subtle, lingering questions that continue to challenge and inspire the quiet, persistent effort of the human mind. The debate between the natural and the technological is merely a reflection of our own evolving scientific and philosophical assumptions. The comet is moving away, but the quiet challenge of its transit remains. The mythic link here is the archetypal idea of the unresolved mystery, the quiet truth that is never fully revealed. In every ancient culture, the most profound wisdom is often found in the things that remain unspoken, the questions that are never fully answered, the mysteries that continue to inspire awe and humility. The 3I Atlas comet, in its silent, swift passage, is the ultimate unresolved mystery, a fragment of technological or natural history that will continue to challenge and inspire generations of scientists and philosophers. The dry, understated humor is the recognition that the greatest truth about the universe is often the most simple. It is vast, ancient, and entirely indifferent to our own small, local concerns. The comet did not arrive to destroy us. It arrived to redefine us. It arrived to gently remind us that our own place in the hierarchy of the universe is merely a temporary, fleeting event, a small, local flicker in the immense, silent drama of the cosmos. The human reflection is the quiet acknowledgement of our own profound curiosity. The 17 days of intense observation, the brief, intense burst of our intellectual energy, is a testament to the resilience and tenacity of the human mind. We are a species that is confined to a single, small planet, and yet our curiosity reaches out to the farthest corners of the galaxy, embracing the immense, silent challenge of the unknown. The comet is moving away, but the quiet wonder of its journey remains. The final, unresolved thought, the gentle handoff to the peace of the dark, is the quiet acknowledgement that the great silence is merely a matter of perspective. It is silent to our ears, but it is a busy, dynamic, violent place, filled with the constant churn of stellar creation and destruction, the slow, silent drift of billions of icy comets, and perhaps the wreckage of civilizations that have long since moved on, or simply evolved beyond the need for grand, noisy pronouncements. We may already be part of the experiment, part of the process of being observed by forces and entities that are entirely outside our current, limited scope. The quiet closure is the peace that comes from the acceptance of the vastness, the silence, and the enduring mystery of the cosmos. The great experiment is complete, and the light of 3I Atlas fades into the enduring dark, leaving us not with answers, but with a quiet, profound humility. We have measured the velocity of the uninvited, peered into the foreign chemistry of a distant star, and felt the quiet, immense hand of galactic gravity. We are the ephemeral, temporary witnesses to a timeless event, and yet our curiosity, that small, insistent voice in the vast silence, endures. Our ancestors survived soup that might kill you, and our minds have survived a truth that might redefine us. The human journey, with its subtle humor and its boundless capacity for awe, is merely a reflection of the great, silent drama of the cosmos. History bends, but never breaks, and the universe continues its quiet, persistent motion. Rest now, and let the immense, silent scale of the cosmos dissolve into the peace of your own internal night. To understand our quiet, measured reaction to 3I Atlas, we must venture into the whispering galleries of human history, where the same anxieties, the same sense of cosmic intrusion, have played out countless times. This is the segment where we hear the echoes from the past, where the scientific certainty of today dissolves into the shared, mythic wonder of our ancestors. The human relationship with comets is not one of neutral observation. It is a deep, primal connection to the idea of the omen. For thousands of years, the appearance of a comet, that fiery-haired star, was understood to be a sign, a break in the celestial clockwork that governed the fortunes of kings and the fate of nations. The sky was not merely a backdrop, but a dynamic, moral stage. Imagine standing on a cold, stone parapet in the city of Babylon 3,000 years ago, watching the swift, silent passage of a celestial visitor. The Chaldean priests, the first great astronomers, were meticulous record keepers. They documented the movements of the planets with an accuracy that still humbles modern historians. And yet, they recorded comets in a separate category, a list of celestial anomalies that were inherently tied to earthly events. If a comet appeared in the constellation of Scorpio, it might portend a war in the south. If it appeared near the Pleiades, it might suggest a famine. The logic was not scientific as we understand it, but it was deeply rooted in the philosophy of a cosmos, where everything was connected, where the microdrama of humanity was mirrored in the macrodrama of the heavens. They saw a great fire snake in the sky, not a dirty snowball of ice and rock. This is the first anomaly. For the ancient human mind, the universe was not random, but purposeful. The most famous example, and the one that connects directly to the subtle humor of historical irony, is the Bayeux Tapestry, that magnificent, 230 feet long piece of embroidered linen that tells the story of the Norman conquest of England in 1066. In the upper register of the tapestry, perfectly preserved in thread and time, is a depiction of Halley's Comet. It is shown with its tail waving, a stark, powerful image of cosmic disruption. Below it, horrified Anglo-Saxons point up at the sky, and the inscription in Latin simply reads, Isti mirant, stella. These people marvel at the star. Halley's Comet was seen as a direct, powerful omen of King Harold's impending doom and the success of William the Conqueror. And the funny thing is, it was accurate. Harold lost, William won. The comet, a mere ball of ice obeying the rules of orbital mechanics, became an actor in the greatest drama of its time. To the people of that age, it was a profound, mythic intervention. This brings us to the quiet absurdity of our current situation. The Harvard scientist, Dr. Loeb, with his hypothesis of alien technology, is doing something profoundly ancient. He is suggesting that the anomaly is not merely a natural phenomenon, but a deliberate sign, a purposeful artifact. He is, in a sense, re-mythologizing the sky, not with gods or demons, but with a form of intelligence that is beyond our current, limited scope. He is suggesting that the 3I Atlas comet is an object with an intention, whether that intention is 100,000 years old and completely forgotten, or whether the intention is merely the random detritus of a long-dead starship. The difference between an ancient Babylonian priest seeing the fall of a king in a comet and a modern scientist seeing the wreckage of an alien vessel is merely the vocabulary. The underlying emotional rhythm remains the same. Something has arrived that is not one of ours. We must also consider the concept of the cosmic clock, the slow, rhythmic turning of the great gear of time. The 17 days mentioned in the video's title, The quiet tension of the approaching deadline is the scientific equivalent of the ancients' ominous forecast. The Mayans, with their profound understanding of astronomy, created calendars that cycled through unimaginable lengths of time, calculating the recurrence of astronomical phenomena with a precision that speaks to a profound respect for the clockwork of the universe. For them, a comet would have been an interruption of the expected cycle, a sudden break in the smooth, predictable repetition of the cosmic clock. Today, our clock is orbital mechanics, and the comet's hyperbolic trajectory, its velocity of 45 kilometers per second, is the scientific equivalent of a broken gear. It is moving too fast, too differently, to belong. The second anomaly from history is the sheer psychological power of mass observation. When Halley's Comet returned in 1910, the reaction in the Western world was a fascinating blend of scientific appreciation and lingering, irrational terror. The Earth was scheduled to pass through the comet's tail, and newspapers around the world ran alarmist headlines about the noxious gases, the cyanogen, that might poison the Earth's atmosphere. Quacks sold anti-comet pills, and many people stayed indoors, taping up their windows, genuinely afraid of the faint, almost transparent plume of the comet's tail. This is a profound mythic link, the invisible threat, the terror of the unknown material. The difference between the cyanide scare of 1910 and the low cyanide reading of 3I Atlas is a delicious piece of cosmic irony. The comet that terrified people, with its presence of a poisonous gas, was ironically less strange than the one that baffled us with its absence of a poisonous gas. And yet, the fundamental human anxiety remains. We are afraid of the material that is foreign, the substance that is not of Earth. Whether it is the cyanogen of 1910 or the inexplicable velocity and chemical composition of 3I Atlas, the human mind struggles to incorporate the unexpected, the outlier. We need to categorize, to file away the universe in neat, understandable boxes. 3I Atlas resists filing. Its velocity says it is from outside. Its chemistry says it is from a different solar system. And its eruption suggests an internal process that we simply cannot fathom. We are left with two uncomfortable conclusions. Either the universe is capable of producing objects that are statistically almost impossible, or the universe is not purely natural. We may already be part of the experiment. The gentle loop to the next segment is the transition from the fear of the omen to the quiet appreciation of the scale of the cosmos. The human reflection on comets has always been tied to the local, to the fate of a king or the success of a harvest. But the 3I Atlas comet forces us to zoom out, to leave the local, petty concerns of our small planet and consider the profound scale of the galaxy. Its journey of 20 million years is a unit of time that is meaningless to the human heart, but essential to the scientific mind. We must now leave the echoes of the past, the whispered warnings of our ancestors, and embrace the sheer indifference of the cosmic perspective. We must look at the comet not as an omen, but as a scale model of the universe's sheer size. The 17 days are ticking, not toward a catastrophe, but toward a beautiful, quiet moment of maximum knowledge. We will now zoom out, far beyond the stone walls of Babylon and the tapestry of the Normans, to the deep, silent architecture of the galaxy itself. Let us now shift our perspective to the heart of the inner solar system, the domain of the sun's intense, searching heat. The defining moment of 3I Atlas's visit, the point of maximum solar scrutiny, was its perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun. This occurred on October 29th, 2025, at 7:47 in the morning, Eastern Time. At that moment, the interstellar visitor was 1.4 astronomical units from the Sun, which is approximately 210 million kilometers, placing it just inside the orbit of Mars. The Sun, at this distance, was relentlessly blasting 3I Atlas with 770 watts per square meter of radiation. This is a torrent of intense heat, a powerful thermal force capable of vaporizing ice and, critically, of breaking apart a loosely bound object. If 3I Atlas is indeed a natural comet, a kind of cosmic agglomeration of ice and rock held together by weak gravitational forces, the heat at perihelion is the likely culprit for its profound activity. The intense thermal stress would have fractured it, creating smaller, more active pieces that would then evaporate faster, leading to a brighter, more dramatic plume of gas and dust, the cosmic fireworks show we have already discussed. This natural fragmentation is the leading, most conventional explanation for the escape velocity ejection of components observed on November 20th. A natural fracture, a violent breakup under intense solar heat, would send chunks of ice flying away at high speed, creating the telltale trails that the amateur astronomers so skillfully captured. The physics, in this interpretation, remains comfortably intact. The event is a natural, albeit dramatic, consequence of a fragile comet meeting the unforgiving heat of a star. But the technological hypothesis offers a quiet, equally compelling counter-narrative. If 3I Atlas possesses any structural integrity beyond simple ice and rock, if it is built with materials that can withstand thermal stress, then the heat at perihelion would not break it apart. It would simply warm it up. For a technological probe, the moment of perihelion would be a strategic window, the perfect time to release smaller components. The intense outgassing and the natural chaos of the surrounding cometary activity would provide the maximum cover, ensuring that the release of small, technological subprobes would go unnoticed by the distant, ground-based observers. It is a logic rooted in the military principle of operating under conditions of maximum noise, a quiet form of cosmic evasion. We must also consider the strange behavior of the anti-tail during this time. The Sun would jet. The stream of material firing directly toward the Sun was a phenomenon confirmed by multiple observatories during July and August of 2025. The presence of this anti-tail, which defies the standard model of cometary physics, must be accounted for. If it is simply massive dust particles, 100 micrometers across, as proposed by scientist David Jewett, then these heavy particles are following their own trajectory, unaffected by the solar wind that pushes lighter dust. This is a subtle, natural explanation that, while mathematically sound, is only required because of the unusual properties of this specific object. But what if the anti-tail is not dust at all? What if it represents a controlled jet, a brief, low-power directional thrust from a technological engine, perhaps using the vaporized ice of the outer shell as a propellant? In this scenario, the anti-tail would be a quiet, purposeful maneuver, a subtle course correction, or a deliberate test of the object's system, disguised as natural outgassing. This interpretation is, of course, highly speculative, but it is one of the possibilities that the scientific community must now consider, precisely because the natural explanations are so strained. The entire observation campaign, particularly the work of the James Webb Space Telescope, is focused on trying to determine the precise chemical composition of 3I Atlas. By analyzing the spectrum of light emitted by the comet's coma, Scientists can identify the exact molecules that are being vaporized by the sun. If the coma is composed of simple, expected cometary molecules, water, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, the natural hypothesis is strongly supported. But if the spectrum reveals the presence of unusual, heavy, or non-volatile elements, or if the distribution of those elements is non-uniform, it could suggest a manufactured core or a shell of unusual, engineered materials. This is the quiet, elegant beauty of science. The same event, the fiery passage, near the sun, provides the crucial evidence for both hypotheses. The thermal stress is either the natural cause of its dramatic breakup or the strategic camouflage for its technological deployment. We are awaiting the final, detailed analysis from the Webb telescope with a profound, quiet anticipation. We also must reflect on the sheer scale of the event. 3. I Atlas is estimated to be between 440 meters and 5.6 kilometers in diameter. That is a huge range of uncertainty, primarily because the gaseous coma and dust tails hide the true nucleus from direct, clear observation. This uncertainty is itself a quiet clue, a testament to the effectiveness of the object's natural or programmed camouflage. An object that size, especially when moving at the immense speed of 221,000 kilometers per hour, represents a significant cosmic traveler, a massive vessel capable of enduring the longest, darkest journeys. The fact that the object reached its perihelion and, according to the amateur observations, began to release subcomponents, places a quiet, intense pressure on the coming weeks. We must monitor those released objects. Natural ice fragments would continue on their predictable, ballistic trajectories, slowly fading into the solar system's light. But if they are probes, if they are intelligent, they may perform a subtle course correction, a tiny, non-gravitational maneuver aimed at a target of interest, perhaps a lingering look at the Earth as they accelerate away. The radio observatories, listening in the quiet night, are the final guardians of this truth, waiting for the one signal that would rewrite human history. Where are you listening from tonight? The vastness of the cosmos feels closer when we consider that material from another star system, a sample from an alien sun, is currently moving through our own cosmic neighborhood. This is a profound moment in the cosmic census, a quiet, direct encounter with the alien. The passage of 3I Atlas is not just a scientific event, it is an archetypal return, a reminder that we are part of a larger, immensely busy galaxy. We must next turn our attention to the deep, philosophical questions this visitor raises about the search for intelligence and the quiet, pervasive nature of the galactic environment. We must look at how the entire event changes our understanding of the cosmic traffic itself. The quiet, strange passage of 3I Atlas acts as a vast, dark mirror, reflecting our deepest human desire and our most profound fear. The desire is for connection, the hope that we are not a solitary accident in this incomprehensibly large cosmos. The fear is the opposite, the terrifying, beautiful realization that we may be utterly alone, the only intelligence in a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars. This is the existential heart of the 3I Atlas story, the reason the quiet details of a distant, speeding comet have captured the global imagination. The public reaction to the story is a testament to this deep, shared human hunger for answers. People are fascinated by the idea of interstellar visitors, the notion that something from another star system is passing through our neighborhood. When you add the possibility, however remote, However quietly debated that the object might be artificial, the fascination turns into a quiet, global obsession. Professor Loeb has received thousands of messages from people across the world, all sharing a common thread, a desperate need to know: is it natural or artificial? Are we alone or not? What does this mean for humanity? This is where the scientific process meets the profound impatience of the human soul. Science is slow. It is a process that demands rigor, peer review, and the patient accumulation of data. In the age of instant information, that patience is hard to come by. We want the answer now, the definitive, world-changing announcement that would settle the debate and immediately redefine our place in the universe. But 3i Atlas, the quiet philosopher, moves at its own pace, releasing its secrets one anomaly at a time, regardless of the final truth. The discovery of 3i Atlas is already profoundly significant. It confirms, with undeniable force, that interstellar objects visit our system regularly, a constant, quiet flow of material from other suns. This means that the galaxy is far more connected than we ever imagined, a vast, porous ecosystem where material, and perhaps technology, moves freely between star systems. These objects are not just cosmic debris, they are messengers, samples from distant places, quiet windows into alien worlds. The journey of 3i Atlas is an archetypal myth in itself. It formed around an unknown star, orbited it for perhaps billions of years, and was then violently ejected into the cold, vast emptiness of the galactic void. It wandered alone for thousands or millions of years, a cosmic pilgrim, until it happened to pass close enough to our sun for us to see it. That journey, epic, humbling, and incomprehensibly long, demands our respect and our quiet attention. Whether the object is a chunk of ice or a piece of technology. But the technological hypothesis, the idea that this is a long-dead, self-aware machine, raises the most haunting possibilities. If 3i Atlas is the product of an advanced civilization, we must confront the quiet fact that its creators may no longer exist. It could be a probe launched millions of years ago, faithfully executing its programming, visiting star after star, long after its builders turned to dust. If we detect a signal or find evidence of manufacturing, it would be a message from a cosmic ghost, a quiet, profound confirmation of an intelligence that once existed but is no longer here. This possibility changes the nature of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It moves beyond the hope of finding a contemporary civilization and includes the more melancholic search for archaeological evidence. The galaxy may not be full of contemporary, thriving civilizations, but it may be littered with the durable remains of ancient ones, probes that outlived their creators, wandering relics of a long-dead golden age. The entire episode has also quietly highlighted the ongoing tension between scientific exploration and institutional control. The restriction of the high-resolution images from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the ones showing the X pattern, required political intervention to force a public release. This, Loeb argues, is an example of the scientific establishment's tendency to practice gatekeeping, controlling the narrative and delaying the release of potentially paradigm-shifting data. The debate is not simply about whether an object is a comet or a probe. It is about the quiet philosophy of discovery. Should we prioritize the conservative, comfortable explanation that preserves the current worldview, or should we embrace the radical possibility that forces us to change our mind? Loeb, with his calm, persistent challenge, is forcing the conversation, demanding that we be intellectually honest about the quiet weight of the anomalies. He is asking us to consider that we may be missing the most profound discoveries simply because we are too afraid to ask the boldest questions. You are a participant in this quiet, historic moment. As we move toward December 19th, 2025, the day of closest approach, the intensity of the observation campaign will only increase. Every major telescope is watching. The final, most crucial data is about to be gathered. If 3i Atlas suddenly changes course, if it transmits a signal, if it releases another, more obvious component, the news will be undeniable. But what if it does nothing? What if it simply continues on its hyperbolic path, a majestic, confusing chunk of ice and rock? We will have learned that the universe is far stranger than our textbooks allow, and that the natural world is capable of profound, beautiful complexity. That, too, is a quiet, profound revolution. The quiet tension will remain until the final data is analyzed. We must now turn our attention to the physical evidence that led to the search for these technological signatures. We must delve deeper into the nature of the X pattern itself, exploring the subtle geometries that make the high-resolution images so highly sought after. It is in the light and shadow of that distant, puzzling X that the final, quiet truth may be hidden. The journey of an interstellar object is a tale of profound, quiet endurance. You must imagine the cosmic environment through which 3i Atlas has traveled for millennia. The interstellar medium, a space of nearly perfect vacuum, crisscrossed by the deadly, energetic streams of cosmic rays and the chaotic, crushing violence of supernova shockwaves. It is a journey of deep cold, profound darkness, and constant, subtle, high-energy bombardment. Whatever 3i Atlas is a simple chunk of ice, a composite rock, or a technological probe, its mere arrival here speaks volumes about its ruggedness. If it is a natural comet, its structure must be remarkably tough. Traditional comets are often described as loosely bound, dirty snowballs, aggregates of ice and dust held together by weak gravitational forces. To survive a journey of millions of years through the vast, cold emptiness, avoiding catastrophic gravitational encounters and the corrosive effects of interstellar radiation, would require a composition far more robust than the comets born in our own solar system's Oort cloud. The sheer size of 3i Atlas, up to 5.6 kilometers in diameter, acts as its own form of armor. That massive bulk helps to shield the fragile, inner core from the worst effects of space, ensuring that enough volatile ice remains to fuel its dramatic outgassing as it approaches the sun. But even a large, natural object should show signs of stress, of weathering, of the kind of rotational instability expected from eons of asymmetrical outgassing. Yet, as we discussed, its rotation is stable, a smooth, steady 16.2-hour spin. This structural coherence is an inherent, quiet anomaly, a silent signature of internal strength. We are observing an object that is simultaneously performing highly volatile, chaotic outgassing that should induce wobble, and yet is maintaining the stable spin of a perfectly engineered machine. The technological explanation, the second possibility, finds in this endurance a powerful, self-consistent logic. If you were to design a machine for a journey lasting thousands of years between star systems, you would prioritize durability above all else. You would design a thick, icy shell for three key reasons. First, to act as a massive shield against interstellar radiation and micrometeorites. Second, to provide an abundant source of raw materials, water ice, carbon dioxide, and other volatiles that could be used for maneuvering, for cooling, or for generating power. And third, to serve as the perfect camouflage, making it indistinguishable from the natural debris of the cosmos. The fact that 3I Atlas is big, fast, and stable supports the hypothesis that this structure was designed to survive such a journey. The close flyby of Mars on October 2nd, 2025, was a critical moment to test this durability. At 19 million miles, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the Perseverance rover were in a perfect position to observe the object interacting with the inner solar system environment. The high-resolution photos that are currently classified or restricted show the X pattern, the subtle evidence of structural release, right at this closest pass. The official narrative is that this is dust scattering, a natural phenomenon, but the technological interpretation suggests that this close passage to a potential planetary target, Mars, may have triggered a deliberate, programmed release of smaller subprobes using the chaos of the natural outgassing as a tactical cover. You must appreciate the quiet irony here. The very thing that makes the object look like a comet, the gaseous coma, and the dramatic tails, may be the most convincing part of its camouflage. The outgassing, the spectacle of a comet approaching the Sun, is not an accidental event for a technological probe, but a predictable, programmed window of maximum confusion. It is a sleight of hand performed on a cosmic stage, designed to deceive the eyes of those who only look for the obvious. This idea that a civilization would choose the appearance of a comet for their probe is rooted in a fundamental understanding of how we, the observers, interpret the universe. We have a deep psychological bias toward natural, conventional explanations. We are so afraid of the ridicule that comes with suggesting an extraordinary claim that we often dismiss the extraordinary evidence. This scientific conservatism, as Loeb calls it, is a necessary guardrail against rampant speculation, but it can also be a profound blind spot. It is the intellectual tendency to prefer the explanation that fits within the existing textbooks, even if that explanation requires 3 or 4 simultaneous, statistically improbable coincidences. 3I Atlas is forcing the scientific community to confront this bias. They are watching an object that is doing everything wrong. It is too big, too fast, too stable, flying down the cosmic highway, shooting a jet backward at the Sun, and ejecting objects at escape velocity. The question is not simply, is it a comet? But at what point does the cumulative weight of the anomalies outweigh the comfort of the conventional explanation? The Galileo project, founded by Loeb, is attempting to systematically counter this bias. By establishing a framework for collecting and analyzing data specifically for the signatures of technology, they are trying to bring rigor to the search for the extraordinary. They are looking for the quiet signs that would confirm a non-natural origin, a radio signal, a sudden, non-gravitational course correction, or an artificial light source. As of the current date, November 28, 2025, nothing definitive has been found. But the observations are ongoing, and the most critical moments of the observation campaign, particularly the high-resolution imaging and radio listening, are yet to come. The quiet tension in this entire scenario is that if 3I Atlas does nothing, if it merely follows the laws of physics exactly as predicted, we will still have learned something valuable. We will have learned that interstellar comets can, in fact, have anti-tails, that they can develop X patterns, and that they can be both massive and perfectly aligned with the ecliptic. This will rewrite our understanding of natural cometary behavior. expanding the boundaries of what is possible in the vastness of the cosmos. It will be a discovery of profound, quiet complexity, revealing the richness of the universe, even without the presence of another intelligence. But deep down, you, I, and the quiet scientists around the world are hoping for something more. We are hoping that 3I Atlas is special, that it is the confirmation we have been waiting for, the quiet proof that we are not a solitary accident. If we are not alone, if intelligence exists beyond Earth, then everything changes. Our philosophy, our understanding of life, our future as a species. It is a terrifying, exhilarating, and beautiful prospect. For now, the cosmic nomad continues its silent journey. It is currently 326 million kilometers from Earth, having re-emerged from behind the Sun in early November. It is now visible in the pre-dawn sky, a fuzzy white dot in the constellation Virgo. It will remain observable until the spring of 2026. Its departure is a slow, drawn-out fade back into the dark from which it came. But before that final farewell, we have the chance to analyze a key period, the moment of its most intense activity, the perihelion, and the structural pressures that were at play. We must zoom in on October 29th, 2025, and reflect on the delicate physics of its inner solar system passage. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally, though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks. as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered. It's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3I Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form. Skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorrell stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I-Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply "Low Probability, High Significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare, and somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another Webb was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The Resonant Guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show, a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning. Like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it "not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, Someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today. Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government." It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern, pulses spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. the kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for "please don't mention the heartbeat." But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that: the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, A team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. You are not sure when the silence became beautiful. At first, It was unnerving, the hush that followed the signal, the symmetrical jets gone cold, the object returning to its shadowed drift. But something shifted in you as the days passed, as the sky remained empty, as no new transmission arrived. You stopped expecting more, and you started listening differently, not with instruments, with attention, because the message had already landed, not in the language of civilization, but in the language of structure, the language of intention, performed without explanation. 49 seconds, 7 pulses, 7 jets, a spiral, a pause, a mirror. That's what it was. A mirror in motion, placed in your path not to reflect a face, but a threshold. You crossed it without realizing, and now the silence is not hollow. It is inhabited by the echo of your own awareness. Changed. At the University of Cape Town, a team of astronomers submitted a paper they titled "The Persistence of Attention." In it, they describe a strange phenomenon in the global observing community. Telescope time, they found, didn't decrease after the signal faded. It increased, not because people expected more, but because something in them no longer needed expectation to care. That's the legacy of 3I Atlas. Not contact, continuity, a change in the posture of your species. You've begun to act like someone is listening, not out of paranoia, but out of reverence. You design instruments as if they will be seen. You write data protocols as if they will be inherited. You arrange satellites with elegance, not just efficiency, not because a silent object asked you to, but because you saw what it looked like to be watched with no judgment. And in that reflection, you saw who you might become. You began to take your shape seriously. You began to spiral deliberately. The mythologies have returned, not as fantasy, but as foreshadowing. Ancient symbols are now studied as if they were sketches made during an earlier awakening. And perhaps they were. Perhaps this moment has happened before, under different skies, with different questions, because that's what silence does best. It records. And now, for the first time in generations, Earth feels like a listening planet, a world tuned not just to receive, but to echo. You feel it in the pacing of scientists who've stopped rushing, in the long-form essays appearing where clickbait once thrived, in children who ask not, "What is it?" but "What does it mean that we saw it together?" You feel it in your bones, even now, that this quiet is not empty, it is charged. It is the breath before. But before what? That no one knows. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this awakening isn't about preparing for a second signal, or an arrival, or some cosmic emissary to descend in flame and geometry. Maybe it's about learning to endure the space between events, to understand that the universe may be far older and more patient than you ever imagined, and that intelligence, true intelligence, is not the ability to speak clearly, it is the ability to hear gently. So now you move forward, quietly. There will be new comets, there will be new anomalies, there will be new models and arguments, and moments of doubt. But none of that will erase this. You saw something impossible, you listened to it without understanding it, and instead of collapsing into noise, you grew still, you became signal. That is the moment Earth changed. Not when it was observed, when it realized it had always been part of someone else's observing system. So now, as you sleep, know this: you are not alone, you are not late, you are not waiting, you are awake, and this silence is full. So, wherever you are, However you found this, thank you for listening. If this story moved something in you, even just a little, leave a comment telling me what time it is and where you're watching from. Let me know if you heard the jets too, in your dreams, if you felt the pulse, if you're one of the ones who woke up. You're not alone in this stillness. You're part of it. You're exactly where you need to be. And until the next whisper comes from the dark, sleep softly. The sky remembers that you listened.